GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS. Endurance Cup Round 2. Welcome to the Nurburgring. Welcome to the sunshine as well. It's been a strange old morning already. In the last hour and a half, we've had low cloud, we've had fog, but now the sun breaks through the cloud and a very busy day of track action here in the Eifel Mountains gets underway with free practice for this monster 48-car grid in anticipation of course, a race that will be 6 hours tomorrow, starting just before 12 o'clock, going into early evening. David Addison and John Watson up with a lark, ready to go. John, sunshine, brilliant grid, fantastic entry this weekend.
Well, as that great grower of turkeys up in Norfolk, Bernard Matthews would say, it's beautiful.
No argument. And we have, as I say, a huge entry. Yesterday, 1 or 2 were out for the bronze test, but now this is the first proper time we really get to see who is going to be able to set representative times, and indeed exactly where you find some clear track space, because although there you've got empty track, people are still pouring out of the pit lane. That shows you just how busy it's going to be. So the Mercedes go through, and of course coming on the back of only one Endurance Cup round so far. That was at Imola in very, very hot temperatures, the first time the championship had been there. But the Nurburgring, of course, is a regular haunt, and it's normally this weekend as well, of course, early September, that the championship, be it Endurance Cup or Sprint Cup, comes to the Nurburgring, and the cars at the end of their lap come thundering across the timing line. So this session, as ever, if you follow the GT World Challenge, you'll know it's not really about being quick, it's about getting drivers some mileage, it's about working through setup of the cars ready for pre-qualifying, and then of course the qualifying session, which will be this evening. We're due to finish at about 8:15 if everything goes on schedule. So there's an entry list and there's a pin, John, and if you stick the pin in the entry list, you might find the winner, because it's wide open, this race.
I mean, it's a stellar entry list. I mean, driving into the paddock this morning, of course, everything's in lockdown at Nurburgring, no spectators. The paddock is absolutely heaving. I mean, I can't remember coming to Nurburgring and seeing a better entry. And everywhere you look, the quality of drivers, the best in the world in GT3, in the world of GT3 racing. So looking forward to something which hopefully will be an exciting 6-hour event, knowing that with a 48-car entry, that the first hour is going to be a bit like being in the M25, the orbital road around Great Britain, around London. It'll be very similar to that. Nevertheless, the cream always rises to the top. The trouble is, virtually every entry is a cream entry.
Well, that's right. And at Imola, of course, it was the Kelvin van der Linde, Mirko Bortolotti, Mathieu Vazivière Audi that came through victorious. You've got 2/3 of that combination here, because Rolfi Nijken, who, as we said last year, is a bit of an AM plus, really. He will take over the Vazivière seat. Now, he and Mirko Bortolotti drove together at Grasser Racing Team last year, but it's another factor, a little unknown, if you like, putting Rolfi Nijken. He's an accomplished driver, yes, but it's just slightly disturbing, that equilibrium from the opening round. Put a different driver into what for them is, of course, a new car, but it's run by WRT, so you know it's going to be a good Audi. And Mirko certainly made that transition from Lamborghini to Audi very successfully.
Indeed, he did. I mean, I think that the transition, which was... I was going to wait and see whether he found the differences between the Lamborghini and the Audi were relevant, but he seemed to make it irrelevant because his pace was outstanding, and that of Kelvin van der Linde. They really made that Audi sing, and I would imagine... And look, Ralph van Eyken's still a gold-grade driver, but the trouble is he's with a couple of platinums. He can't get any higher than platinum.
So this is a 90-minute session as you look there at the 107 Bentley going through, and that is the car in the hands currently, this combination of drivers, Nelson Panciatici, Pierre-Alexandre Jean and Seb Morris, who is at the wheel of 107. It's Nelson Panciatici, another single-seater graduate. There you've got the Gulf combination, John, Audi and Porsche.
Yes, iconic brand, what can you say? It's a brand that has relaunched as a fuel and lubricant supplier in 2020. As we watch the Bentley making its way thundering up through the Schumacher S's, big car, but you know, that K-Pax Bentley, we know that's the 107. So Nelson Panciatici, 100%
Panciatici.
Yes.
Panciatici.
Got it.
Yeah. And I haven't talked about him for a few years, so it's taken me 3 goes at it, but we got there.
He just going back to the first of the sprint rounds at Misano, got sort of beaten up, but he showed very good pace. That incident up at turns 10 at the Misano, where In fact, he and the Lexus, which is again here this weekend, again a car that showed fantastic performance. So those two got tangled in the closing stages of that third event at Misano.
Well, the target time at the moment is set by Lamborghini. Sandy Mitchell has done a 1:56.909. Sandy was the winner of British GT with Rob Collard last week at Brands Hatch. Rob doing British and also GT World Challenge Europe, defecting after probably 2 decades, if not more, in the British Touring Car Championship and really enjoying GT racing. 93 Ferrari goes through, and that's got Edward Cheever III behind the wheel in this car that's shared with Jonathan Hui and Chris Froggatt.
Times are just changing as the cars complete a lap. So Maro Engel has gone quickest in the number 4 Mercedes, Chris Mies second, Sandy Mitchell third, and then Klingman in the BMW has gone fourth. So it's all changed as cars just simply go out, complete their installation laps. And we go back to Eddie Cheever III, who looked again, I think, a very strong part of a 3-part team in that Sky-backed Ferrari 488 Turbo.
And behind him, I think that's one of the Bentleys out of the CMR stable, Classic and Modern Racing, the French team that has cars in the Am and Pro-Am categories. So right now, 991 has gone fastest, which gets John excited about Porsche. Robert Renauer in the 911 is fastest on a 1:55.595. As you see, Maro Engel second quickest. The gap between them is half a second. Maro Engel is on his toes here, seeing whether he can go for the top time. He doesn't have to, it's not qualifying yet, but he does want to prove that this car is a quick car. HRT, not the Holden Racing Team for Antipodean viewers, but Haupt Racing Team. Hubert Haupt has set up his own team, taken many of the old Black Falcon crew with him, like team manager Sean Paul Breslin, and set up a turnkey operation really that straight away has delivered the goods.
Indeed, and you'd expect Maro Engel knows this place better than he probably knows his own house. Again, weather conditions, ambient temperature on the low side, the air is very dense. There was a covering of fog about an hour ago, but that's cleared away. So if you've got that thick, dense air, it's great for engines, great for downforce. And if you're going out on a fresh set of rubber, which I assume most people would have chosen to do, if not the best of the rest from what they had left over. So it's still the Porsche 991 Herbert Racing, that 1:55.5, just a 1/10 of a second ahead now of Marcello in the 88. So this is on board Mirko Bortolotti, not on a Lamborghini, but in a WRT Audi, and very successfully making that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Winner, of course, at Imola. Riding with him then now, so good to go on board as he plunges down the hill, uses the curve on the outside of the road, but now the speed building all the time up to the Advantbogen.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's barely a flick of the steering. Well, it's more like a flex of your wrist muscles then up to the chicane. Difficult to see just the point of where you have to commit for your apex, but it's one of those places to get through as cleanly as possible. There are marker cones, how long they will remain there. And of course, we're seeing we're in a new era, in a new decade, and the punchline is track limit abuses. It's happening across the motor racing spectrum, not just here in GT3, a little lock-up coming down into turn 1. So track limit abuses are going to be monitored very closely indeed, so the times will be deleted as we go back to Eddie Cheever III. And I can't see a lot of resemblance with Eddie Cheever Jr., who is probably the dad of Eddie Cheever III. And anyway, whatever.
Well, right now, Eddie is getting on with the job. He's doing a decent effort here. He's got the road to himself. Oh, so briefly. A lot of effort being put into the car there. Look, as he now heads down through the S's on his way towards the very bottom of the hill and to what is turn 8. It's one of those sponsored corners, but as we run on Pirellis, we better just call that turn 8.
Turn 8. So it's a question of just getting it in. It's the exit. There you see the curb. You're allowed to run that curb. That's all perfectly legal. Then there's the run up through the Schumacher S's. And easy to make an error on the entry, getting it wrong. Then it'll all go wrong at this point forward. And then the short sprint down to turn 11.
Eddie Cheever takes another bite of curb. There's a lot of energy being put into this lap. Let's see whether it's going to pan out for him, because right now he's down in the first sector. In fact, he's not actually proving the improvement. There you see it goes yellow on the graphic, so Eddie Cheever hustles on, speed building now as he goes from the Bilstein curve through the Ad Van Bogen, makes the climb up towards the chicane, and it is the so-called soft chicane, the motorbike chicane that is in use. That keeps the speed up a little bit more. It's less stop-start than the Formula One chicane. Which is,
in my view, is a very good idea.
Yeah, less wear and tear on the cars. Also, perhaps because it's a less of a pinch point, takes away damage early on. Other categories racing here this weekend will use the Formula One chicane, like Formula Renault Euro Cup, for example. Right, Eddie Cheever does the lap, and it was an improvement in the end. It's put him up to 25th, although then as Raffaele Marciello goes to the top, everybody gets nudged down a place. So Marciello is now fastest on a 1:54.675, and Cheever, of course, now, John, is coming up to the traffic.
Yeah, and interesting, Sandy Mitchell in the Barwell Lamborghini is up to third place, so that's a strong run. Timo Bernhard in the 98 Porsche up to fourth. John Pla in the 87 Mercedes up into Jimmy Pla, not Jonathan, Jimmy Pla in the 87 Mercedes. No surprise there.
And there are two cars that have yet to set a time, one of which is Tom Onslow Cole's number 74 Mercedes, the Ram racing car that is shared with Martin Conrad and Raymond Vos. And there's another one that's not been out at all, and I'm trying to get my brain around which one it is. There'll be 48 to choose from. Might take me a moment or two, but there's one that's not yet ventured out. We'll keep an eye to that. So Raffaele Marciello currently the fastest. There he is in the Mercedes 88, a car that is shared with Timo Boguslavski and Felipe Fraga. 89 Mercedes, currently in the hands of Benjamin Heat, the Chilean driver. Lucas Legare and Alex Fontana share that car with him. So Heights up towards the line.
It's going to be a real busy racetrack. Not so much in this 1.5 hour session, but when we get into the first of the qualifying sessions, or the pre-qualifying session later this afternoon, but then qualifying itself, which starts 7:10 at night, so it will be still daylight when they have the first of the 3 qualifying sessions, but getting bit by bit, not quite dark by the time they finish. So the 100 Mercedes,
Alessio Lorandi.
Yeah, Alessio. Just trying to Alessio.
Yeah. Another ex-single-seater racer, Formula 3, got to European Formula 3, Alessio Lorandi. So many young drivers now switching to GT cars. Fabian Schiller and Maxi Buch sharing that. Dare one say, John may disagree, John may have a thought on this, but quite a lot of the Mercedes, you're looking at one real gun driver and 2 up-and-coming drivers. There isn't an absolute, unless possibly you could argue number 4 is that car, there isn't necessarily a whole line of Mercedes with 3 absolute star turns in it. You've got 1 real pro and 2 good drivers, but with the exception of the Engel Stoltz Avril car, there isn't another Mercedes necessarily in that same league.
I was just going to say that the number 4 Mercedes is the one that you might call the star, but then the 88 has always been one that's with Raffaele Marciello, Boguslavski, Felipe Fraga. Which of the 3 there would you say would be the weak link? It's certainly not Raffaele Marciello. Boguslavski is the least experienced. Felipe Fraga is an absolute star in Brazil and has transformed into a great GT3 driver. But when you're in these quasi-factory-backed teams, there are circumstances in endurance racing where they will bring in, let's say, a silver or possibly a gold driver to go along with a couple of platinums.
Now this is a strong car, the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche. It's Matteo Cairoli at the wheel of it, Italian Carrera Cup racer, Super Cup driver. He's raced as a Porsche Junior and now Porsche factory driver in GTs and in Porsche Super Cup. But Matteo Cairoli then accelerating his way now up towards the right-hander at what is the now Hyundai N Curva, or if you prefer, at turn 17. So Cairoli in a car that he shares with Christian Engelhardt, returning to Porsche, and Sven Müller. In terms of the fact that it's a quick car and good drivers, you'd say that should be up there fighting for a win. And of course, over 6 hours, so much can happen. And
the car that I'm really looking forward to seeing is the 98 Rover Racing Porsche, because we've got, for the first time to my knowledge, Simona De Silvestrio driving in a car which is a very strong car, Jerome Bleekemolen and Timo Bernhard. So Sylvester, who's been racing all over the world, went out to Australia, did supercars out there, now back again in Europe, and realizing that actually, probably if you're a European driver, racing in Australia is a bit of a stretch. It's not easy to make a transition from Europe into that form of touring car racing, and certainly over here in Europe, primarily, GT3 racing is, I'd say, the strongest race series across the board.
Yes, he's been brought onto the Porsche factory squad, both for Formula E and now GT racing. So into the pit lane, you're riding with him there. That was Raffaele Marciello in 188. This is the Alex West, Chris Goodwin, Johnny Adam, Aston Martin. It is Johnny Adam who has been put behind the wheel, and so the multiple British GT champion, he's won it more times than anybody else, is going to be hustling on, and at the moment that car is 24th, and that would put it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in class. The class being Pro-Am, of course.
Yeah.
And this is going to go quicker because look, he's done 2 personal bests in the sectors. So 188, Johnny Adam, up towards the timing line. Let's just see where this is going to put him. So 24th at the start of the lap, and as he breaks the beam now, he goes up to 17th fastest. So yeah, a good effort by Johnny, as you would expect.
And that is 1.9 seconds away from the fastest lap, still remaining in the hands. Raffaele Marciello in the 88 Mercedes, the 991 Porsche still second. And Rob Collard, we had breakfast this morning with Rob. Gone third quickest in the 77 Lamborghini, Barwell Motorsport. Great effort.
That muesli has kicked in now, and he's scrambled eggs, and he's going swiftly. I found our missing car as well. It was the other Rover Racing Porsche that was late out. So the Julian Andlau, Klaus Bachler, Dirk Werner car. Dirk Werner is at the wheel of it. It's number 99 Porsche. It is on track. Slightly bizarrely, the slowest at the moment is the number 25 Audi of Marcus Winkelhock, Dorian Boccolacci and Christopher Haase. You get the feeling that they are working through a programme here, but you don't expect Santalok to be slowest.
No,
penultimate is the JP Motorsport Christian Klein Mercedes that he shares with Matthias Lauda and Patrick Kropinski. It's a new team, but Christian Klein yet to get the best out of that car, and it's in the pit lane.
Yes, Matthias Lauda joining on. He's been, well, he was for a period, DTM driver.
That's right, yeah.
Again, another change within Johnny Adams continues.
What's fascinating about this entry is how many new names there are in it, not only from Imola, but into the championship as a whole. And of course, one of the things that the teams are now finding, and we were learning about this morning, talking to Ricky Collard, who's in the entry as well, because the global situation on travel is changing all the time. 2 or 3 days notice you can get a phone call because driver A is now unable to travel, either because of quarantine in his home country or the country he's got to race in and from where he's coming, and so drivers are having to at the last minute not come, and other people are finding a 11.5-hour deal to suddenly put them into a car. So Ricky has ended up at FFF Racing Team in a Lamborghini against his dad.
Couldn't have been in a better place.
Well,
and he was absolutely ebullient about the performance of the car, and his eyes were like out on stalks, saying, comparing the performance in terms of the handling more than anything else. The differences between the Aston Martin, the R Motorsport Aston Martin he raced last year, and then the FFF Lamborghini, and the differences are significant. Just watching here, the 15, this is the Tech 1 Racing Lexus, which I think is probably a dark horse for this 6-hour event. The car has got stonking performance, got loads of torque and good straight line speed performance. In Mazzano in particular, was almost impossible to overtake in terms of anywhere that was relatively straight. And likewise here at Nurburgring, we know it's a tough circuit to find a way around a very competitive car. This car is as competitive pretty much all round a lap as anything else in the field.
Now Marcus Winkelhock is improving, and the 88 Mercedes that's the fastest thus far now taken over by Timo Bogowslawski. At the moment we're looking at Timothy Bure in the Lexus. Now this is the car that is 47th in the times. It's just spent over 10 minutes in the pits. So Timothy Bure back out on track, but this should be an improved lap, or he's heading towards an improved lap. He shares the car with Aurelien Panis and also with Thomas Neubauer. So 3 quick young drivers, still the cup entry this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that for me, the driver lineup, but certainly it's the car itself. I mean, a silver driver can press the throttle as hard as anybody else can in a straight line, and that was where the Lexus showed great strengths. especially in Misano.
Bit of a twitch up the curve there, but the Lexus is about to come booming out of the last corner then, heading up towards the timing line. So again, it's one of those circuits, you've got the start line halfway down the pit straight, the timing line, the finish line is in front of the timing booth, that race control. Over the line goes Timothy Bourret, and he's up to 44th, so it was an improvement, a 1:58.720, but there's still more to come from that car. Right, now there, thinking Porsche, is Timo Bernhardt, Le Mans winner, and this is the fastest of the or the faster, I should say, of the Rover cars. Not though the fastest Porsche outright. Still that Renault car from early on, 991, is the best of all the Porsches.
Yes, so I can't imagine there's a massive difference between all the Porsche. A lot of it will depend just on what each individual team is going to work or cycle through. But certainly with Timo Bernhardt in that car and ably supported, as I mentioned. First Simona de Silvestro, then Jerome Blakemold, who seems to hop in and out of Pro-Am cars and then Pro cars and into the Rover racing, and again probably in that car on the basis, apart from his well-known and respected ability, because of his availability.
So there you have the Rover Porsche heading towards us. We've just got Mirko Bortolotti up to second in the Audi, so 6/10 back from the Marciello time. He's done a 1:55.300. Again, how much you want to read into this, you can see there the order on the Rebellion timepieces clock, the graphic, but it is Mercedes from Audi, from Porsche, from Lamborghini for top four. So the BOP working well with 4 different brands up there. But again, are people going for a time? Are they on new or old Pirellis? Is this all about setup, getting drivers the mileage? You know, Marciello goes out in 88. He knows that car inside out, he bangs in a time, then he can leave the rest of the session to the other drivers to get the mileage in.
Yeah, I think that would be certainly the case of the 88 Mercedes, and it might be the same with Bertolotti, has 9 laps. So that time that put him up second quickest was done on what we believe was his 8th or his 9th lap. So whatever the set of tyres they've had on, whether they've been enlarged and changed or not, but one would assume that that's just adaptation and dialing in of the WRT, the lead WRT Audi, currently second quickest.
So there, Timo Bernhardt heading up towards the timing line. It's Benoit Moulin who is the slowest at the moment in 5:55, which is the other orange one Lamborghini. He shares that, I said Benoit, I meant Baptiste Moulin, with Jonathan Cecotto and Ricky Collard. So you know that's going to be a car that will get up the order. But again, as we keep saying, how much do you read into this? 98 Porsche stays 5th, and it is still 88 Mercedes topping the times.
So, well, we're just 24 and a bit minutes into this session, and more than likely, unless somebody does throw a new set of tyres on, which I don't imagine they'll do, it's certainly they'll not do it in this session. They may have done at the beginning, so whether anybody's going to go out and challenge the current quickest time of a 1:54.6 of Raffaele Marciello set that time. Now Thomas Berger-Vlasky behind the wheel, probably unlikely, but certainly some of the cars that are slightly out of position further down the field, one would expect that Maxime Soulet, for example, in the number 3 Bentley, K-Pax Racing, you'd assume that it would not be naturally in 31st position. Dennis Olsen in the 40 would not naturally, in the Porsche, be in that position. Those cars are the ones. Marcus Winkelhock in the Audi, Antelope Racing Audi, 25th. David Rigon. Wherever you look, there are cars that are currently out of position that one would assume. Frank Pereira, 18th position in the 163 Lamborghini.
It's interesting as well, isn't it, that Bortolotti has been in this car since the start of the session, whereas others have pitted and cycled through drivers. Now, it might be that WRT is breaking this up into 3 almost 30-minute segments, but Bortolotti perhaps needs the mileage less than, say, a Rolf Ineichen in that car.
I'm sure the team are aware of that, but they've chosen to put Mirko into the car, give him the best shot, because they may feel that these are the circumstances that we want to run Mirko Bortolotti. I mean, teams make judgments. You know, these have been decided. These decisions would have been made on Thursday evening, but probably maybe Friday evening after they've done some running, and they'll stick to that plan.
Another car we've not yet mentioned is the reigning champions, Andrea Caldarelli and Marco Bappelli. with Dennis Lynn joining them once again, and that car is 7th fastest in the hands of Marco Mappelli, but it's hardly drawn attention to itself at all yet.
I mean, that car last year, not only was the team and car and driver with Andrea Caldarelli the dominant package, but I think just in the space of the 6 months, there's been a change of the order. I mean, as fantastic as the FFF Lamborghini was last year, it didn't illustrate that kind of domination. Certainly didn't do it to me in Imola for the first of the 3-hour endurance events.
No, I think you're right about that, and you can see, can't you, how Audi and WRT in particular has come back all guns blazing. Vincent Voss had probably in GT terms his leanest year last year with WRT, and there is certainly a renewed sense of determination to go winning races again.
Well, you did an iPod thing with them, didn't you? And
I never got round to Vincent, unfortunately.
Okay, because I read one the other day, and it was Vincent that was on an SRO site.
Yeah, he's done an interview for the recent press releases and was saying, last year hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people like a team like WRT are not here to make up the numbers. They're accustomed to victory and domination. And one of the great aspects of their team has been their pit lane work. So a combination of improving the product, getting a car, and also there's been, a further revision, we mentioned this in Imola, to the Pirelli tyre. It's a very, very late call into the pit lane for Mirko Bortolotti, just about managed to scrape in before he clipped that marker, that defining marker of the pit lane, the demarcation line.
Well, there is a graphic example, as you look at 99 Porsche in the pit lane, of how the drivers treat the pit stops, flat out until the very last possible moment. Dirk Werner was late out, remember, and he's early into the pit lane, and the fact that it's in its garage, 21st fastest this car, suggests there's possibly a problem at Rover.
I mean, it takes such a small little issue. Oh, there is the Lexus off into the gravel.
That is an issue. Bure buried almost there, Timothy Bure.
At least he's found the access road behind the gravel, and he can trundle around that till he finds a bit of... There is the remains of the access road. He's just making it... Oh, that's not good for the front spoiler. Take it easy, don't overdrive it. Bertolini, Andrea Bertolini. Synonymous. You could put his middle name must be Enzo. I'm sure it is.
Ferrari tester turned Maserati racer in GTs and multiple GT champion, and a mainstay in recent years of the AF Corsa squad, and Pro-Am champion with Louis Machiels and Nick Homerson. He is the pro against, admittedly, two very accomplished AMs in that car. So Bertolini sets off downhill. Pro-Am is the class in which it runs. 32nd overall is where you find that car, 8th in class.
Again, you just imagine with Bertolini behind the wheel, there's going to be some improvement. 32nd overall, so 1 minute 56.911, 2.2 seconds away from the 88 Mercedes, the fastest current lap time. It's not relevant to what this car is doing, as you pointed out, a different class, but it's always a gauge to know what is your ultimate pace, and within that 33 Ferrari, Bertolini is going to be the driver that will extract that.
So Bertolini here with the task in this session of getting that car set up as it should be, so it's easy for the AMs to drive. You as the pro have to, in a sense, sacrifice yourself a bit, because you are meant to be able to drive around any imperfections, whereas the AMs want it just so to get the most out of them. But the three of them work so well together as a combination.
But just to give us an idea, the 51 Ferrari, which is, you might call it the pro car, Alessandro Pierguidi, currently is 24th, and their lap time 1:56.5 against what we've just seen from Andrea Bertolini, 1:56.9. So it's only 0.4 of a second between this car, which is the sort of Pro-Am car, and the full pro car. So while Bertolini's time, you might think, oh, that's not very good, only 34th quickest. Well, it's only 0.4 of a second away, but it's 10 places behind the full pro car, full pro Ferrari.
Well, that's the fastest car out of the session thus far. We're at the 1/3 mark, so we've had half an hour of the 90 minutes that we have in free practice. Timo Boguslavski is the top, and it is Raffaele Marciello that set the time, but Timur is behind the wheel. Remember, he was a winner in the sprint race at Brands Hatch last year, Nico Bastian. The first time we'd had a Silver Cup combination winning rather than an overall entry, if you like. But Boguslavski has proved himself to be a very good, accomplished driver. And of course, the good thing for him is it's a second year in the Mercedes, so he knows the car very well.
He does. Just feeling his way still. He hasn't received or reached that level of confidence that we know that Marciello has in the car. But that's all a part of the learning curve. Interestingly, you're talking about what WRT were doing with the 31 car, which had been driven by Mirko Bortolotti. We saw Bortolotti coming into the pits. Well, they decided that 30 minutes was just about enough for Bortolotti, so Ralph Anaken has taken over that number one, that 31 number one, if you want to call it that, WRT Audi.
Tempting fate by saying this, but it's been a remarkably calm session thus far, hasn't it?
Simona De Silvestri has also taken over the 98 Rover Racing Porsche. So interesting to follow the lap times of Silvestra, having taken over from Timo Bernhardt.
So entries, as we say, shuffling all the time. Having said it's a calm session, we've just had a spin, and it is 991. Ralph Bone at the wheel of the Renault Porsche has had a moment within the last sector. I think it might have been at the chicane. So the yellow flags have been withdrawn, but Ralph Bone having a rotation.
Not do his set of Pirellis very much good. Hopefully it didn't stand on the brake pedal, which usually ends up with having 4 big flat spots.
So there's Boguslavski for the ACA ASP squad. Again, we talk about the different brands that are represented, and it's also fascinating to see not just the battle between drivers, but teams as well. So HRT versus ACA probably is the top 2 Mercedes squads. There you've got the cars pouring through the Mercedes arena, through turns 1, 2, 3, loop them around turn 3 here, and then you've got that sharp right of turn 4 before the sprint down towards the S's.
Improvements coming from the Dynamic Motorsports Porsche. Caroli's jumped up into 5th place. That's the first time we've seen that car move forward, and it's one of the very few cars throughout the field actually has got a green arrow facing upwards, indicating that its performance has improved. Back to Eddie Cheever the third, the Sky Racing Ferrari. So Cheever getting a reasonably good run, which I would imagine he will soon be getting out of that car. Currently it's fallen away a little bit, down in 42nd position overall on a 157.5, and the last lap was a 158.3, and there we see the replay of the Lexus driving its way through the gravel.
Yeah, so that was Bure being able to get back on again. So having a drama, but getting away with it. So where's the Sky Ferrari up to? Because we had...
it's all the way down in 46th position.
It is, and it's still Edward Cheever at the wheel, isn't it?
It is, yes. I mentioned that a second ago, that they've kept him in that car. Now, whether they think that Eddie Cheever the third needs more seat time, which I somehow doubt, or whether they're using his expertise and knowledge to try and dial the car in before that car would then be handed over. So the 93 would be Jonathan Wee or Chris Froggatt would be the 2 options when Cheever gets out.
So on board now with Cheever. On the power, heads through the Mercedes arena.
Looking through, a lot of the teams are now rotating. Fabien Barthez is back in behind the wheel of the ACA ASP Mercedes that Jimmy Pla had started the session in. That car currently still 7th quickest. So Fabien Barthez will probably get another 30 or so minutes. We've got 55 minutes of the session remaining. Patrick Kujala will be the lead driver on that Lamborghini, the 78. Barwell Motorsport.
Yeah, Kuyler, somebody.
Schandorf,
Schandorf, I think I go with, yeah. Yeah, Kuyler racing British GT in a Mercedes and European for Barwell, so he races for them on some occasions and against them on others. Frederick Schandorf, winner of the Lamborghini World Finals last year with Jonathan Cecotto.
Yeah. Patrick Kugler is a real Lamborghini star.
He is. Yeah.
How long has he had that beard? He looks like he's just come out of the woods.
Yes, I know what you mean.
It's scary.
3 or 4 years. It's quite a thick beard.
It is a massive.
Yes.
I mean, if you saw him at night, you'd think he was a grizzly.
Keeps him warm in Finland, it must do.
Yeah. But a real star behind the wheel of a Lamborghini.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Although oddly, despite his prowess, he's only ever really done pro-am things for Lamborghini. They've never thrown him into a full-blown pro combination car.
Would that be his choice?
Don't know, don't think so. However, he's on the books. He's a very, very rapid driver. Right, in the traffic is Frederick Schandorf. So there is the Barwell car, 78, which means that he is with Alex McDowell and Patrick Kuyler. That being a car that runs in the Silver Cup. So you're not necessarily looking at overall results and pace here, it's within the class, but Schandorf really going very nicely indeed, isn't he?
Mm. Yeah, it's a very well run team. I mean,
yeah.
Barwell do a great job. And once they transferred over to Lamborghini, it was a whole new world of Lamborghini.
And with great success, British GT and World Challenge Europe, but Mark Lemmer running this brace of cars in Pro-Am for one, silver for the other.
Now, is that Black Pool or Black Bull?
Black Bull.
Bull.
As in the animal, yeah. It's a whiskey,
I mean, I know what Red Bull is, but what is Black Bull?
I think it's a whiskey.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not a whiskey drinker, so it doesn't really matter. If it fuels the car, that's all that counts.
I think this is the Sandy Mitchell connection, the young Scottish driver that brings that backing. I think I'm right in saying.
That must be then a boutique product, i.e. the whiskey.
Yes, probably right. Yes. If we mention this often enough, somebody will offer samples of it to persuade us how good it is.
66 Audi, Attempter Racing, strong entry. Mattia Drudi's got second quickest, so that's another driver who, out of the blue, has done a strong time. Over half a second still behind the time set by Raffaele Marciello, and right now it doesn't appear to me that anybody's going to get close to the 154.6 that Marciello set early in the session.
Not seen much of McLaren yet, have we either? But you've got Joe Osborne 18th in number 69, the Rob Bell, Ollie Wilkinson car. So the session is 40 minutes through. And let's find out a bit more about the 99 Porsche's problems. Klaus Backler is with our pit reporter, Gemma Scott.
Klaus, you've had a last-minute setup change on the car. What encouraged you to do that setup change at this point?
Yeah, we just changed something for the front axle. It was just a small change. Dirk Werner was out and now he tries again. And then after this change I will jump in.
And you'll be jumping in next?
Yeah, after the next run I go in and we just try some different stuff for qualifying and then also for the race.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenna. It's all eating into the session, though, of course, isn't it? It was out late because they were making the adjustments. They're still not totally happy, so it's back in. On the one hand, John, it is a free practice session, so this is why you have it, so you can work through setup. But equally, you want to be out there doing the miles.
Yeah, and we're nearly midway through this 1.5 hour session. So time starts to fall away very quickly, particularly in the second part of this session, 1.5 hours, 45, just for 50 minutes to go. And if you want to cycle through, all your drivers, give them a certain amount or a reasonable amount of seat time, as we catch a glimpse of Marcus Winkelhock, currently only 29, which again is well, in my opinion, out of the position that you'd expect the 25 Audi to be in Santalok Racing. Marcus Winkelhock, Dorian Boccolacci, Christopher Haase. I mean, what more can you say?
Another quality lineup. There's in the background in Icon over the line. He's fourth fastest. But of course, you wouldn't expect, with all due respect, his times to be as good as Bortolotti, for example. Now, Marcus Winkelhock, there, look, has just gone third.
So that's more as I would expect.
Yeah, agreed.
There it is, yellow and white. Marcus Winkelhock, has just been a loyal employee of Audi through the variety. Marcus, what are you doing? You're cutting the grass. I mean, that is marginal in terms of what I would consider. But we've seen happening before, coming through turn 3, you make that very, very tight apex. In fact, you cut so far inside the apex, and then you get the better run, the straight run through turn 4, which is the more important part of that series of corners 2, 3 and 4.
So right now we've got the leading 7 covered by just under a second, and
which actually by normal standards is a massive amount of time.
Yeah.
Normally we're looking at about the top 25 covered by a second, but of course it's still early days.
Yeah, plenty of drivers yet to do a time. Winkelhock's now got himself in traffic, so there's another of the Porsches. Now this is an interesting one because it's the KCMG car. We've normally been looking at them with Nissans, but now it's a Porsche for Edoardo Liberati, Josh Burden and Alexandre Imperatori. So the Hong Kong team with a new mount. Interesting how many more teams are looking at Porsche this year and how many more Porsches are on the grid.
I'm delighted to see it, and I think that certainly after the success of Spa last year, why would you not look at the Porsche option? I mean, it's all about the package that's offered by the manufacturers, and then the balance of performance, and where, well, a car like a Porsche, which is sort of slightly out on a limb compared to all the other designs here, but nevertheless is such a successful, since 1963, 64, when the 911 was initially presented and then went into production, and it's still in production, albeit, but the version that we see racing here this weekend still is following the original concept. The WEC version is a bit of a hybrid with the engine ahead of the rear axle, as opposed to what we see here, looking at Allenham, where the engine is stuck out the back.
Yeah, as you say, it's the same shape pretty much, but they've got bigger over the years. The 911s these days,
they certainly have
huge cars compared to those 1960s ones, but the shape still so recognisable. So 991, Daniel Alamant sharing with Robert Renaud and Ralph Bowen. What this means now, with almost half the session done, is that everybody has had a go in that car. So you see the difference that some of the teams are approaching the session with. 108 being warned about track limits. That's one of the first warnings we've had. Romano Ricci, Stefan Tribodini and Petru Umbarescu, the Romanian driver, who's at the wheel of 108 at the moment. It's Tribodini, and it's being warned about track limits at turn 10, which is effectively the climb
that's up through the Schumacher
S. Yeah,
it's on the exit of the Schumacher. Normally you don't expect or see track limit abuses at that part of the racetrack. There are other parts of the circuit where it's easier to abuse the limits, but there we are, just goes to show.
So there is Alamant up towards the end of the lap. He's another driver that came from Carrera Cup Germany into the 24-hour series, the Creventic series, but now good to have him on a World Challenge Europe grid. The Herbert Motorsports squad coming into this gradually, but still running customers in other less high-profile championships, but gradually making that switch to the top line of GT racing.
Another driver who's made an improvement in the 89 Mercedes is Alex Fontana. He's moved up into the top 20, 17th quickest, directly behind Mad Panda Racing's Yuzuki Elpera. I love Mad. I mean, it's
a great name,
the
isn't it?
Best name you could have for a race team, Mad Panda Racing. So to Mercedes 16th and 17th.
Yeah, JB Motorsport, in contrast, sounds a little bit ordinary, doesn't it? But yes, Mad Panda, for no other reason we like the name.
Brilliant.
It is going well. There is Christian Kleen, as you see, still at the wheel of the 111 Mercedes that was a long way down the times early on, but he has actually now got it up to 22nd, which you might think, oh, really? Well, out of 48, that's not bad.
Interested to see just what Christian Kleen gets on, and then obviously Matthias Lauda likewise to see what he can do. But Matthias has only graded silver, Christian Kleen platinum, and then they got the bronze driver Krupinski from Poland.
So Kleen over the curb, and we're at the halfway point now of this free practice period. Remember, there is pre-qualifying and qualifying to come during the day, and then it's the 6-hour race that the teams have tomorrow, in which so much can happen. We daren't look at the weather app yet, but that's always a factor, never mind what's going on the road itself.
So unusual graphics on the 111 Mercedes. It's almost like a commando, you know, disguise.
Yes, it is a bit, isn't it? The other task we have of the rest of the season is to actually get to the background of why it is called Mad Panda Racing. The team are quite tight-lipped on this, but it's a challenge now to find out where the Mad Panda name has come from. Felipe Fraga, however, is at the wheel of 88, the fastest Mercedes in the session. It's a 4/10 advantage it has, thanks to a Mirko Bortolotti time, as we see number 69 McLaren in the pit lane. Now, that was Rob Bell at the start of the session. Joe Osborne has brought it in. Ollie Wilkinson is due a go in that car, run by the Optimum Motorsports squad. And there is your fastest car in the session.
Yeah, that's been the dominant car, really, since the session started some 46 or so minutes ago. No real surprise. Maybe the fact that it was Raffaele Marcello who did the time, but he would have no doubt had the best of the Pirelli tyre that's on this car. So used it to full effect, and has got just under now half a second of an advantage over 66 Audi Carl Louis Schramm, who is the first driver to actually manage to look like it might challenge the time that the Mercedes set early in the session, but still 4/10 away.
Yeah, Schramm taking over the Attempto car, number 66, which was, of course, doing really well with Fred Verviche at the wheel in the opening stint at Imola, but then Fred was the one, actually, that cost them time in the pits by parking incorrectly, effectively.
It was a bit tight, and he got it in at about 45 degrees, and of course it meant that the team couldn't go to work in the car, and they had to do a bit of a shuffle in the pit lane. And, I mean, the pit lane here at Nurburgring is a full-scale pit lane, but when you put 48 cars all piling in and around a similar length of time, you do have to seek cooperation. We keep talking about it every event, endurance event where you get these large entries. You have to find cooperation with your neighbours. Schiller in the 100, the Mercedes, Fabian Schiller likewise up to 8th place, so times are improving as driver changes occur. And whether the changes are also involving a tyre change as well, I don't know, but certainly we now see Fabian Schiller up into 8th place in his Mercedes.
That's good, because if he can do the time, bearing in mind that Maxi Book is one of the drivers who you'd anticipate to be the real star in that car, gives it a better chance. It's not just dependent on one driver's pace.
No, with Fabian Schiller, I think, I remember a couple of years ago he did a stunning job at Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a young German driver who's got tons of ability. Just, you need to be in the right place at the right time.
Family has a huge chain of car dealerships for different manufacturers in Germany. 188 Johnny Adam over the line. We've got two more cars that are under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. 26th, the Michel Blanchimont, Clement Zeiler, Pierre-Yves Pack Audi is one, and also the JP Motorsport Mercedes, Patrick Krupinski, Christian Klein, Matthias Lauda car, that also being investigated for possible speeding in the pit lane.
So Johnny Adam and the Aston Martin track a little bit busy coming through, turn 4 down into 5. So frustration. And this is what you're seeing now is what it's going to be like certainly in the first hour, if not for the entire 6 hours. The difference in performance of all these different brands is so small, especially the straight line performance, because if you're slow into a corner, you can still be quick off it, and it just ruins the momentum of those that are trying to make progress. So Johnny Adam gets through cleanly down into turn 8, makes the drive up the hill into the Schumacher S's, and sails on relatively happily along the way.
Another car I would have expected more from is the penultimate one in the times, number 5 Mercedes. It's in the pit lane. Sergei Afanasiev, Hubert Haupt and Joel Camathias, and that, surprisingly, slow, making one wonder whether that's got a problem.
It's only done 6 laps. Oh no, it's not 21 laps. His best lap was done on the 6th lap.
Yeah,
so
correct.
So it's done a fair bit of running.
It has,
so,
hasn't it? Yeah.
Well,
makes you wonder what's going on there.
yeah.
The car that's done the fewest laps is the Giacomo Altway 163 Lamborghini, I think I'm right in saying, on 14 laps. And we saw that in the pits not long ago. It's Altway along with Font Pereira and Albert Costa in the Emile Frey Lamborghini. Now there is the car that's second. That is Kim Louis Schramm, switching from Phoenix to Attempto for this year. Kim Louis Schramm came out of the German Formula 4 series, but made the switch initially to GT4, then to GT3. It's taken him a few seasons, in fairness, to find his feet, but now every season he looks more accomplished in these powerful GT3 cars, and he's developing quite nicely.
Yeah, and then particularly with Mattia Drudi as your co-driver, who is another driver who has, I think, made large, giant steps almost in terms of his progress. And it is Drudi who, in fact, set the fastest time in that car, 66 Audi, just recently.
Indeed so. Now we have still just under 39 minutes of the session to go. Let's hear from another driver. Jim Pla now is with Gemma Scott.
Jim, the car's clearly running very well this morning. You're currently setting the fastest times.
Yeah, this morning the car looks good. We are working on the setup. We need to improve some adjustment with the front, but yeah, it looks great. We have a good team, so I think it will be good for this afternoon. Now we will put new tires at the end of the session, so we will see the good pace, and yeah, we are looking forward to the race here.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Yeah, Jim Pla did the opening stint in that car and was very rapid. He's probably your benchmark driver. And Gemma having a quick word. Of course, in these socially distant ages in which we have to operate, you have to be 2 meters away from the driver, so it's not easy for each to hear the other. Plus, you've got the cars in the background, so challenging times all round. But we'll do our best to bring you the news from the pit lane. As you look at number 90, there is the Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes of Ezequiel Perez Compact, Patrick Assenheimer and Romain Monti.
Magic. I mean, I could just say that entrance name all day long. It just amuses me to
great,
bits.
isn't it?
Amuses me to bits.
I want to meet the Panda. I hope he comes to Spa. I think Spa is a good place for a Panda.
You know, with great respect to Ezequiel Perez Compact behind the wheel, what team would he be better fitted to drive in than Mad Panda Racing?
It's a Spanish squad. He's the Argentine influence within it, having switched different cars, different teams, different brands over the years, but now at Mercedes. Last year was a really tough season for him,
yeah,
wasn't
he had
it?
that big shunt at Paul Ricard, and that set him back, I think, a couple of races. Contact going into scene with another car, and he ended up in the tyre ball, quite a heavy impact, ended up with a fracture of a vertebrae, if I remember correctly.
So it's very good to have him back. And again, not only did he have the accident that derailed the season, but he was trying to adapt to a new car anyway. So it was all pretty tough for many reasons last year for him.
Tom Onslow Cole in the 74 Mercedes. He has made an improvement, as has Thomas Neubar in the Lexus. So improvements for Onslow Cole up to 23rd, and for Neubar up to 26th. Sergei Sorokin likewise in the Ferrari has moved up to 11th.
Okay.
So there is still actually improvements coming, even at this late phase or mid-late phase of this 1.5 hour session.
I suppose in part it depends who's behind the wheel, doesn't it? Because if you've run your slower driver and now at the end of the session you put your gun in, then there's going to be that change.
Indeed there is.
So again, different plans, different teams. I'm a bit surprised that the 56 dynamic Porsche is not being dynamic. Andrea Rizzoli, Adrian Delina and Mikkel Pedersen are only 43rd, but they have just improved to 43rd. But again, you've got so many good cars, they can't all be in the top 20, can they?
And we saw at one point the number 4 Mercedes was the quickest car on the track with Maro Engel. Now that car is down to 13th. Vincent Abril is behind the wheel, and just goes to show just how quickly your what would have been a great time. There it is, Vincent Abril behind the wheel of the HTP Mercedes. Just how quickly your excellent time set in the opening minutes can just fade away down to 13th.
Absolutely. Now what about Abril at the end of this lap then, because Sector 1 is down, Sector 2 is down.
Yeah, no, it's...
Nothing on this, but the next one could be worth watching, couldn't it?
Well, I would imagine there's 2.25 seconds down overall, 156.9, and that's, what, 2.3 seconds away from the best time that we saw from the 88 Mercedes. I suspect Vincent de Brille has been sent out on a set of tyres that have seen the best of their performance window. So just going through the... Well, this is what it's going to be like in the race.
It's true.
You're not going to have a brand new set of tyres for every stint. So you've got to make the car work with what you've got, what's available. So it's a learning phase right now, I suspect, for Vincent de Brille. So 107, just seeing a further improvement from the Bentley, the CMR race team. They made a small improvement up to 15th. So that's something that they can be, I suppose you might say, pleased with.
So the session with 34 minutes to go. 88 Mercedes still holding sway and underlining the pace of Raffaele Marciello, because that was a time set a long, long while ago now. Timothy Buret's Lexus back into the pit lane. That was the car for Tech 1 Racing that was in the gravel earlier. Neubauer and Panis, the other two drivers of the car. Neubauer behind the wheel, or was behind the wheel. Aurélien Panis now behind the wheel, in fact ready to go out. The young French driver, Olivier Panis' son. Who else, if anybody, is improving? 107 Bentley, we've touched on. The car now of Pierre-Alexandre Jean, and also number 19 Lamborghini is an improver. That's the car that Hiroshi Hamaguchi is sharing with Phil Keane, and another new driver into that car, Elliot Earhart, the German driver this weekend, joins the crew. So across every entry, as you would expect, 3 drivers for this 6-hour race.
Number 32, another potential race-winning car. So the WRT entry. Dries van Thor, Christopher Mies, Charles Weerts. Strong run, we saw that in Misano in the sprint events. So Charles Weerts back in that car. And Christopher Mies, you know, whatever time, anytime you put Christopher Mies into an Audi, a WRT Audi, you've gained a bonus with putting Mies into that car. So you've got the experience of Mies with the speed, you've got the speed and the growing experience of Dries van Thor, and Charles Weerts, who's the 3rd driver in that car, who is beginning to pick up and match the qualities of both Mies and Dries van Thor. In just watching the way the Audi can hug the curb at the exit of turn 3, clearly there's been some work, or significant amount of work done on these Audis over the winter time. I think the car is a much better balanced car, but also it doesn't seem to be that sort of knife edge style that it used to have, where it was, to drive it, you had to have those instincts that enabled you to catch it before it almost broke away. But for those drivers that like a little bit of comfort from the rear of the car, in other words, you drive the car on the rear wheel, not the front wheels, it was a tricky car to drive. Now it looks as if it's a much more balanced car across the entire aerodynamic speed range, and therefore easier to build confidence amongst the range of drivers they employ.
Yes, certainly Audi taking a big step forward this year, or back to where you would anticipate the brand to be. And it's also good that you've got Mercedes still up there, and you've got Porsche, and you've got Lamborghini all in the mix as well. The best of the Ferraris, only 11th at the moment. That's the SMP Racing AF Corsa car of Davide Rigon, Sergei Sorokin and Miguel Molina. Sorokin, of course, one-time Grand Prix racer, but adapted pretty well to GT cars at Imola, as we saw. Into the pit lane then goes number 32. So the Audi is in. Charles Weerts bails from that stint. And we're into the last third of the session now, half an hour to go.
Emil Frey Racing, Lamborghini, Frank Pereira, Albert Costa and Giacomo Altoy.
Yeah, that should be a competitive car, shouldn't it?
Ought to be, yeah. No, it's Emil Frey Racing. You know, they raced the Lexus last year, developed it and raced it last year, and in fact in 2018. So transitioning over to Lamborghini, learning the intricacies. And as we see there is Charles Verts getting out of the car, the tall young Belgian driver. Compare him in height to Dries van Thor.
Yeah.
And you need to have a wide range of seat adjustments. Normally what teams do is they have a seat fixed. The idea in the past where you have a seat slide, as you would have in your road car for that matter. Now these teams are now referring back to having a fixed seat position. Oh dear me. That's buried Stuart Hall, not Brighton Beach. This is the sand at Nurburgring.
It's a long way off. That's down at turn 1,
It's
I think,
a
isn't
long
it?
way off, indeed. I mean, I don't quite see how he got there. You can just about see the marks.
Yeah.
Certainly gone in backwards and gone in deeply as well.
Red flag.
Yeah, not
So,
surprised.
yeah, the clock will carry on ticking because it's free practice, but 33 off the road at turn 1, Stuart Hall, who actually is probably the most experienced driver in that car, so makes you wonder whether it was a problem that put him off.
There's damage to the tyre wall, so apart from retrieving the car, there's going to have that the binding that holds those tyre bales together is all going to have to be reset. So 28 minutes to go. By the time they get the cars off the racetrack, that'll be a couple of minutes. Then retrieve the Audi out of the gravel, that'll be another 2 or 3, 5 minutes. And then set about resetting the tyre bales, and so probably it's going to be a 10 to 12 minute delay.
Yeah, probably, which will give them another 10, 15-minute blast at the end.
Let's look skyward, because we always like to look skyward when we're at Nurburgring, because to the left we've got snow falling, but to the right people are walking around as if it's a summer's day. This is the Nurburgring. There is the look at the sky.
It's going grey, going dark.
No, we're not going to talk about grey anymore. It's always going to be light or dark.
Okay. Well, it's getting gloomier, that is for sure. But you can have, as you know, 4 seasons in one day here. So, with the skies looking a little leaden for the moment. I mean, it'll be boiling hot in 10 minutes. The cars head to the pit lane. We are looking at about 9 minutes before the session gets underway, says race director Alain Adon. So the car can easily be retrieved from there. Hopefully, if the tyre barrier isn't too badly damaged.
There looked to me a couple of places where the initial impact and then the car slid down that tyre, the binding that holds the tyres together. So the tyre bales themselves may need to be realigned, but it's the binding of the strapping that holds it together will have to be reaffixed. So that's the thing that will probably take most time to do. But anyway, we've got 27 minutes. If we get a good 18 minutes, 15 minutes, look how dark it is. Hate to say it.
But you're right, it has got very dark
Suddenly, all of a
quickly.
sudden, it's just closed in.
Yeah. Well, driving in this morning before 8 o'clock, it was pretty foggy on the road.
It was
outside,
and the road surface was wet, damp. Anyway, there was a lot of humidity in the air, and the road was damp. Got to the circuit, and all of a sudden, the low cloud, rather than let's call it that, I call it fog, just lifted as the heat came. It lifted, and it looked like it was going to be a stunning day.
Now let's try and catch up with more from the pits. Mirko Bortolotti was one of the stars of the start of the session. He can tell us about the lap he's with Gemma.
Mirko, you've come across from Lamborghini to Audi this year. How are you finding the transition across to the Audi, first of all?
Yeah, I feel quite good. It's been a strange year so far, as we all know, but it's great to be back at the track. It's great to be back racing full-time, more or less every weekend, so it's a good feeling. It's also cool to see some fans joining the show this weekend again, so I'm really happy about it as well. And yeah, it's been a good start to the year at the end of the day, because Imola has been pretty good. We started with a really good performance, a really good win, so yeah, everything's looking good. Feel quite good in the team, feel comfortable in the car. Definitely there's always something that we can work on, improve on, and yeah, that's it. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to this race and to the rest of the season, of course.
How different is it coming across from the Lamborghini to the Audi?
Well, the cars, especially in cockpit-wise, when you jump in, it's quite familiar, it's quite similar. Same steering wheel, same dashboard, so it feels really similar when you get in the car, but definitely the cars are different, and I had to adapt. Still trying to learn, the last bits of the Audi, as I've been 5-6 years driving obviously the Lamborghini, so it's cool. I mean, it's a new challenge. I really, as I said, feel comfortable in the car, like it quite a lot. and yeah, I feel really good.
Where would you say the biggest challenges are? The biggest
challenges in this championship, it's a big challenge generally because it's so many cars on track, so many competitive cars, teams and drivers. So you have to be really on it and close to 100% if you wanna be successful. And that's why we love this championship and we love to be here.
Thank you very much. Have a great season, a great weekend.
Good to hear from Mirko Bortolotti, and he touches, in a sense, John, on a point you and I have been making a lot over the last few seasons. It's the Endurance Cup, but basically that is a long sprint race because it's flat out for the 6 hours here.
Yes, I mean, we've got two series. We've got a sprint series, which are based on 1 hour races. This year we're going to have 3 races at some events, but normally it's 2 as we look back. There it is.
He arrived backwards.
And it was pretty good speed. I mean,
yeah.
The gravel didn't slow him. They hit the tyre bales fairly heavily, so not a lot of loss of speed. Stuart Hall probably wasn't feeling very comfortable knowing that inevitably something was going to come into contact with the rear of that Audi. So he went off at pretty high speed.
Yeah.
So I wonder, was that an issue above and beyond? I wouldn't imagine if it was just a small driving error that would be the consequence. But maybe there was something that was beyond Stuart Hall's control, and that led to what I thought was a pretty high-speed exit out at turn 1.
Absolutely. Well, he'll go to the medical centre to be checked over, but it was a fair old impact, that. And as you say, the gravel didn't slow him down much. He still hit it with a fair lick.
Yeah, he seemed to sort of hop and skip and jump. There's Chris Goodwin there, the driver on the right, highlighted. Johnny Adam and Alex West in that Garage 59 Aston Martin.
Stuart Hall was 40th overall, that car that he shares with Rick Brokers and Benji Goethe. James Poole joining Garage 59 this weekend, the British driver teaming up with Valentin Asclot and Andrew Watson. James Poole we've seen in Super Trofeo most recently, but came out of British Formula 4, British Formula 3. Raymond Vos with Martin Conrad and Tom Onslow-Cole in that oh-so-spectacular Mercedes that looks like someone's got 3 pots of paint and just lobbed it at the car.
It looks like a painting by Alexander Caldwell, I think it was. And we're going to see, actually, I think, at the Spa 24, there's another very spectacular paint design on one of the BMWs.
Yes.
Which reflects back in the 70s when BMW went to artists, you might call modern artists, to do designs for 4 or so of their race cars. There is the car currently, number 4. Where is
14th?
14th.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Yes.
Surprising.
Just
that car
away.
Initially was quickest and then second quickest.
Number 5 is 47th. So HRT, Haupt Racing Team, not having a great morning. Sergei Afanasiev has done the bulk of the driving in that car, but you get the feeling all is not well.
No, and it's done 26 laps, so it's not as if it's been in the pit lane for any great length of time.
There's the GPX Porsche, Romain Dumas, Dennis Olsen, last year's Intercontinental GT Challenge champion, and Thomas Preining at the wheel of it. And in the background is number 12, Matt Campbell, Patrick Pilet and Mathieu Jaminet's Porsche.
The whole Gulf livery is fundamentally such a great... I mean, each car has got a slightly different variation on the Gulf with the blue and the very bold orange. So one's got the 12 has got the 2 arrows, the other car's got the single arrow, which is a reflection of the 1970 or 71, which it was, Porsche 908/3, which was a very unusual design, which was dominant in the Targa Florio, just destroyed the opposition. So this is an homage to that particular event in the way that the slightly different theme on the Gulf overall theme with the blue and the orange. Great classic looking, simple, says the message.
Absolutely, and good that the team is acknowledging the heritage of both the brand of the sponsor and the manufacturer, Porsche itself as well. Right, clock ticks on down, 21 minutes and counting. The restart was scheduled, or estimated to be scheduled for 10 past 10. We're almost there, so it might be that there's a little bit more of a delay, but we'll keep you posted.
Temperatures come up fractionally, but what's interesting is the level of humidity is exceptionally high, 93%.
It is a lot,
I would expect 93% for it to be pouring. But
give it time.
It is very dense, heavy air.
It's like being at Sepang. Right. So Stuart Hall, as I say, 40th. He's the man that's off the road. and we wish him well. Stuart with the WRT run Audi. Stuart, who's been looking after Benji Goethe and Father Roel Goethe's collection of cars through Rofco.
Which are all the Gulf liveried cars that ever were made.
Yeah, a great collection that the Goethe family has. Now, Andrew Watson, we saw a few moments ago his car in the pit lane. Andrew Watson, Aston Martin driver, and he's currently with Gemma.
Andrew, things are fairly quiet down here in the pit lane at the moment while we wait for the track to go green once again. But talk us through how's the car this morning?
Yeah, not too bad. We had some testing on Thursday, but it was really difficult because it was wet and dry, and we haven't been here with the new AMR Vantage, so a bit of learning to do. But this morning we've been just working through the plan. We have a new teammate in James Pull, so he's new to us, so he's learning the car again after a few months off. But he's a good driver, so he's doing a good job, and we're just trying to work on the race balance now.
Well, James seems to be settling in, as you say. A little bit of rain in the air down here at the moment. There's a couple of spots starting to show themselves.
Yeah, I think we expect that here, so good preparation for Spa later on, but I think it'll not affect the cars unless it gets any heavier.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Good to hear from Andrew, another driver that's come from UK Ginetta One Mate Racing, but has driven quite a variety of GT cars in recent seasons and adapted very well and improves year on year on year.
Yes, I mean, with the Garage 59, when they were running in McLaren's, he was a part of that programme. And then the transition over to the Aston Martin, working well as a team. Andrew still, I think, waiting to make that final breakthrough to get to the level where that you would be a driver in demand across the pit lane. So the car currently in 13th, was it? The 1-5, just trying to look down the timing scoring. They were, I think, 15th. Yes, they were 15th. So James Pull behind the wheel and a 155.8, and that is just 1.2 seconds away again from the unbelievable lap set by Marcello on his third lap. Brand new set of tyres, clearly, but Marcello used them to maximum effect and has remained unchallenged. It's only the 66 Audi that's managed to get within just under half a second. And Marcello and Raffaele, well, what can you say?
He's a star in that Mercedes, that is for sure. There's the Rinaldi Ferrari that Rino Mastronardi
Louisa's Place. There's a little bit of local advertising for a Berlin restaurant. Just like all that.
Right, the cars are being sent down the pit lane. We're on short notice to get the session underway. It's gone green on the graphic. It's gone green now on the timing screen. So out they go. And Alain Adam says, right, let's crack on. So those that were on their toes are good to go. Look, the Audi dropped down there. That's the car of Rolf van Eiken ready to go. See WRT at pit out, which is crucial, isn't it? Because as soon as you accelerate away, you can straight off and get up to speed. You don't have to be trundling down the pit lane. Your caution, if you like, is on the way in, but on the way out, he just accelerates straight out.
But you know, if I was in the pit lane running a team, unless I was the first car, which the number 4 Mercedes HTP was, I wouldn't be in a rush, because all you're going to get is congestion.
Yeah, true.
And there's the 88 current fitness car. You're going to go out, it's going to take 2 or 3 laps for this field to spread itself around the racetrack. And there's not an awful lot of meaningful lessons that are going to be learned, because you're going to have frustration from drivers complaining on the radio that so-and-so hasn't used his mirrors or we can't get through. This is the Genion Boutsen BMW. Karim Auger, one of the owner of the car, or principal driver of the car, let's say.
Yeah, one to watch in that this weekend will be Jens Klingmann, very quick BMW driver in GT cars, only the DTM, so he will be the star in that car, I suspect. Right, what can they do in just under 16 minutes? Well, you're going to lose at least 2 with an out lap, probably another 2 with your first start-up lap, so there'll be a limited amount of running before the end of this session, but the bulk are going out. Not everybody, still quite a lot in the pits, but the bulk are going back out onto the circuit now.
I mean, it's just, you can see how difficult it is. Okay, the cars are now going, some will be coming up to the completion of their out lap, some will be going on too. There's Raffaele back in the wheel of the 88 Mercedes. So just really typical Raffaele, just cruising through the light lap, waiting to make track position. coming up to the chicane, a little flick to the right, run the curb, a little flick back to the left, back to the right to flick the curb. So not in any big rush until he gets to the exit of turn 16, and then he will nail it, I'm assuming. Was that nailing it or not, Raffaello? Couldn't make it out.
Well, he's more committed to it now than he was 3 or 4 corners back,
Certainly
so
is.
let's see what he can do. He's already got the gun time by 0.4 of a second, but it's interesting, isn't it, that they put him in for the last few laps, almost, if you like, to do a dummy qualifying run, but he's very deep, very wide at turn 1 off the racetrack.
Yeah, completely over around the corner. Maybe he hasn't got the same level of grip on the set of tyres that he had when he first went out.
It could be they kept him on old rubber,
Indeed,
so
I think he has been
having to
kept on
persevere.
old rubber.
Which makes sense, actually, because you keep your good rubber for qualifying and, of course, for the race. It's wide at 4.
He's so wide in the exit, turn 4.
I'll talk us round this lap, John.
Okay, down through 5, then the drop down into this right-hand corner. Always hard to get the apex, but Raffaele Marcello makes the apex, gets a good exit, runs the curb. Then there's a curve here called, this is turn 7. Not that you would know as a corner, but it is turn 7. Then down the hill into turn 8. An opportunity if you can make it work for you, but you've got to be side by side going into turn 8 to make it work. Then the beginning of the climb uphill through the Schumacher S's on dodgy tyres that have seen a better life. Probably it's a feather. And qualifying with new tyres, nail the baby.
Lots of traffic ahead, all good practice for the race itself, as Raffaele Lello Marciello turns left, turns right in all the traffic. Which way does he go now? Is he going to sit there? No, he's not. He's going to try and find a gap, but of course he's going to get more and more traffic at the tightest part of the lap up at the chicane.
Yeah, he's going to look to make a move up into the chicane. Can he get alongside? Will he be given the ground? Yes, he is. But it's all irrelevant because this lap time will not be within 4 seconds, I suspect, of what he achieved previously. That mistake into turn 1 would have accounted for a significant part of it, and the fact that the performance of the car at this phase of its cycling will be down on what it, well, waiting for a lap 158.8. That is 4.2 seconds away from what he did the quickest time earlier in the session.
So just under 13 minutes of that session to go. Nobody as yet has set an improvement since we got back underway. Dorian Boccolacci here takes over number 25 Audi for Santalot from Marcus Winkelhock, with Christopher Haase yet to really do anything behind the wheel today. But, you know, Christopher Audi doesn't really need to learn, does he? He'll just slot in and you plug and play him, off he goes.
And just looking down at the laps, last laps for these drivers since the track went green, and they're all 4 or 3 seconds away from the quickest laps that we've seen throughout the session. Oh, that's not Dorian Boccolacci. That is careless. You don't need to drop your right rear wheel into the gravel like that. That could have caused you to have a problem on the exit. It's a little moment of heart and mouth, I think, but corrected and on his way again. So waiting for Marcello to complete his second flying lap just to get a gauge to see what the performance of the 88 Mercedes is, vary against what he... There's a good lap, a 155. Marco Mappelli has gone second quickest. I was going to say there's a good lap, and there's Marco Mappelli in the 63 Lamborghini. First time that car's appeared anywhere in the top 6, and Marco Mappelli has put it very securely into second place. Now that was not on a set of tyres that's done a lot of laps. Nevertheless, that's the performance of that car we had anticipated.
And it's the only improver that we've had since that red flag. As you look at number 5, which has to be an improver, Joel Carafias has now got behind the wheel of it. He's one of 3 drivers doing the GT3 and GT4 activity this weekend, because he drives a Porsche Cayman with Ivan Jacoma in the GT4 European Series. But Carafias, for the moment, I'm afraid, is in a car that's not playing ball, because it should be up near the pointy end, and it's a long way adrift.
Well, it couldn't be any further down. He's on the back row of the grid provisionally.
Yeah.
So that is not a reflection on the performance of the car. So they either have got an issue with how the car is performing in terms of its overall handling, or don't know what the problem could be.
Well, this is why you have these sessions, to work through them, but effectively out of 90 minutes they've had 80 trying to get to the bottom of the problem. And now 10 minutes remain. Camathias looks like he's got the pace. Has he, though?
Well, he's caught up to the back of the 98 Porsche. So that's also, you can see where that 98 Porsche is in terms of its overall position. The 99 is done 28th position. Well out of order.
Yeah. Right, any more improvers since we had Mapelli? Actually, Mapelli has pitted, having done that, if you like, qualifying lap on what we assume was new rubber. He's gone straight to the pit lane as Camathias gets himself in traffic up at the chicane then. Clock with 9 3/4 minutes to go.
It was a funny time for FFF Racing to do what they have just, if they put on a fresh set of tyres or a brand new set of tyres, to do it when the racetrack was very busy, because there's no guarantee you will get that clear lap. Yet Mapelli managed to do a really impressive lap, the second most impressive lap of this 1.5 hour session. And then just straight back into the pits, which looks, to all intents and purposes, really like a simulation for what will come up in qualifying this evening. When qualifying begins here at 7:10 at night, runs through until 8:10.
It's going to be a bit gloomy by the end of that, isn't it? A bit dark. So it'll be interesting to see in cooler temperatures what the lap times are. People will have the face masks on to keep warm, never mind anything else by that stage. So at the moment, it is Mercedes from Lamborghini, 0.469 of a second, being the margin between them. Marciello and Mapelli, the drivers that have set the times. Third is Audi 66, fourth is Audi 25, and fifth is Audi number 31. Sixth, number 991 Porsche, that's still up near the front, up near the top of the times. What about Ferrari? James Collado now at the wheel of number 51 here. Only 29th. You're getting the feeling on the current evidence this is on the BOP, not a Ferrari circuit.
Disappointing, because it is important that the Ferrari name is such a iconic name across all ranges of motorsport, and I'm disappointed to see that James Collado currently is that 29th position overall. I mean, does not really, in my view, reflect the performance of the drivers of that car. So one has to say, well, what is that team, what is AF Corsa doing? Are they just going through a preset schedule of work, and they know that the car, when they go into qualifying, or certainly go pre-qualifying and then into qualifying, the performance of the car will be there.
So 7.5 minutes of the session to go. Kelvin van der Linde is now having a stint behind the wheel of 31. Fifth fastest. More track limit warnings coming for Bentley, coming for Mercedes, and also now coming for the K-Pax. Bentley, Rodrigo Baptista, Maxime Soulet and Jules Gounon. We've hardly talked about Bentley in this session. They are at best 13th, the CMR car. Where do you get the K-Pax entry? 23rd, Jules Gounon has just put it here. That's a long way down.
It's again, looks to me as if the team is going through a pre-ordained work schedule, and have a look and see where those Bentleys are when we go through pre-qualifying. I would expect them to be much further towards the front, but then you can't get 20 cars into the top 10, and there's 20 cars, in my opinion, who ought to be automatically in the top 10. So which of the top 20 will be the top 10? Well, we'll wait and see.
And then again, depending on which driver for qualifying pace or single lap pace relative to different drivers combined over 6 hours, we are about to have a driving standards flag issued to 108. That is our first driving standards flag of the session. It's going to go to Romano Ricci in the CMR Bentley. So that's with 6 minutes on the clock, but a driving standards flag.
There it is. 63, the car that leapt up to second quickest. Dennis Lynn behind the wheel, Marco Mapelli having given up the seat. And again, if you wanted to pick a car that would be a potential winning car on Sunday after 6 hours, you'd be hard pressed to pass the 63 Lamborghini from the history of the car, the team, the driver lineup had from 2019.
Dennis Lind, another graduate of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo with great success, won the European Championship, won the World Final. He won the, what was then Blancpain GT Series Asia, going back 3 seasons. Very, very accomplished Lamborghini hustler. We've seen him racing in the UK, in British GT, in the GT Cup, but he's another of those drivers that excels behind the wheel of the brand he is associated with. Andrea Caldarelli, we were talking about earlier, had a debut outing in British GT, won his first race at Donington, at which he'd never raced before, and became the first Italian driver to win a British GT race as well. But he, Marco Beppelli and Dennis Lind combined in this car here. Rule them out at your peril.
No, it's a phenomenal story, the FFF Racing. Dennis Lind's backed out of it. He got slightly compromised. Now he's compromising those behind him, and the sister of the Barwell Lamborghini frustrated that Dennis Lind has backed off coming into the S's, and that's an effect on the Barwell Lamborghini, and you can see a little bit of headlight flashing going on.
It's Kuyula in 78. Somebody's had an off there. Look, there's a demolished marker board. That's Gunon in number 3. He's up to 16th, so the American team, K-Pax, that operates this Bentley, inching up the order, which is encouraging to see.
Yes, and I mean, this is one of the cars that would be in my automatic top 20, but can they transfer or translate that into a top 10 start position? If you're not in the top 10, the bit between 11 and the rest of the field generally means your race, the first phase of the first stint, is going to be absolutely horrendous. Just finding a way through a myriad of other traffic, other cars around you. So the drivers in the 16 Bentley, Jules Gagnon behind the wheel right now, know just how important getting into the top 10 is to be able to make a breakaway from the main pack, and also avoid all the trouble that arises inevitably into a very congested opening lap around Nurburgring.
So Gunon in, and that I would imagine is the last we'll see of that car in the session. They might do a practice pit stop and send it out just for another in lap, just so they can complete the pit stop process, but for a lap time they're not going to get another one in. But it has at least moved itself up the order, which is encouraging. The best of the Bentleys though is the 107 CMR car, thanks to the Seb Morris time. There's the sister 108. Romano Ricci was given that driving standards flag a little while back.
Did we get a notification as to which corner, or was it just in general?
For that car, I think it was turn 10 again. It was the Schumacher S.
Sure, strange place to, but there we are. Maybe the demarcation, the white line which demarcates racetrack and then track limits.
So I'm still intrigued to know more about the Stuart Hall incident. I'm sure Gemma is on the case to try and get to the bottom of that once WRT has got to the bottom of that. But it did go off with such speed, and Stuart, an experienced driver, finished 4th at Le Mans in the prototype days that he raced. You wouldn't expect him to throw it off, so it does make one wonder that something went wrong.
It certainly had all the lookings, the bits that we just caught the end of the car going backwards in the gravel, but it had all the makings of something beyond the driver's control. It didn't look, from what we could see, as if it was an error of driving. But maybe there's 2 sides to the story. The first side we didn't see, the second side was the tail end. So maybe Stuart Hall can enlighten us as to what actually occurred.
Once he's back from his check-up at the Med Centre, I'm sure he will be able so to do. Ferrari, we understand, the AF Corsa Ferraris that were disappointing us, they're struggling for grip at the moment, so they're trying to sort that out during this session. But at the moment, still Davide Rigon is the better of the Ferrari drivers, 12th.
Well, that would indicate to me the low ambient, low track temperature is that Ferrari is not getting the tyre temperature that they would like, because the car needs to work in a temperature window. So if you haven't got the temperature, maybe because the Ferrari is slightly more nimble on its 4 wheels and tyres, that's the only thing I can assume, because there's no other reason for a lack of grip.
So 98 Porsche heads through the whispering Mercedes arena. And this is another car that perhaps we've not really seen the best out of in this session. Jeroen Blickermolen is at the wheel of it. Ted, how about that for traffic ahead of all coming up towards the S's? The Mercedes at the head of it, the Porsche at the back of it. We'll try and work our way through, but the flag will be imminent. It might just squeeze one more lap out of this. Good to have Jeroen Blickermolen as well back in the championship. Very accomplished GT racer all over the globe. Son of very brief Grand Prix racer Michael Blickermolen. But Jeroen is another of those oh-so-accomplished GT racers that perhaps doesn't get the recognition he deserves in some quarters, but he's a very, very good driver indeed.
And also a member of the Blakemole family, a family who understand that life is about pleasure. Life is for living. And the Blakemoles, I think, are good examples of how to make the best of your life.
I mean, Dad, I think, has only recently retired from racing, but there was barely a season that Michael Bleekemolen didn't find something to race, whether it was a one-make Renault Clio or, as I say, a Formula 1 ATS. Flag is out, so the session has an end. So Marciello, Lynn, Verviche, the drivers at the very end, but significantly Mercedes, Lamborghini, Audi, Porsche, your top 6.
Yeah, just going to see what would be the lap time for the 88 Mercedes, just to complete Marciello going back into the pit lane, so we won't get that information. So I suspect that was a run which was inhibited by the fact that the tyre had seen the best of its days, so Marciello ends up still quickest overall, dominantly by almost half a second.
Well, apart from the incident really for Stuart Hall, yes, I know we had Timothy Bure in the gravel and a couple of other moments for 1 or 2, but it was a relatively calm session. But I'm still a bit concerned about that Audi and the speed at which it went off. As Arkin Arca in the Attempto number 55 Audi. Alex Arca, forgive me, Dad is Arkin. And that car run by the family squad up towards the end of the session. There's a thought from WRT that it might have been a brake issue on the Stuart Hall car, which I think we were suspecting.
Yeah, but I didn't want to say it. I mean, these cars all run ABS brake systems, and you know it's computer controlled. So if there's a glitch, then that could have been the car. It certainly had all the makings of an incident beyond the control of Stuart Hall.
Agreed.
But until we get that information from the team, it's purely speculation.
It'd stack up though, wouldn't it, as you look at Alex Arca then in the Attempto car heading for the pit lane. So I think that's pretty much most people now that have taken the flag. Klaus Bachler in the pits already, and there is the car of the session, Raffaele Marciello bringing it back in, and Jérôme Policon's team, Autosport Promotion, set to work to fettle that, ready for pre-qualifying, which will come up later on in the morning. So a quick look over to the Nordschleife, but the order at the end of the session. Raffaele Marciello then is the fastest in the Mercedes he shares with Timo Bogostowski and Felipe Fraga. Marco Mappelli goes second, Fred Verviche third, Marcus Winkelhock fourth, Mirko Bortolotti fifth, and Robert Renauer sixth, ahead of Sandy Mitchell. Then Matteo Cairoli, Alessio Lorandi was ninth, and the 10th quickest time was a Jeroen Bleekemolen time. Good to see the Lexus getting itself moving in the end, but Jim Plough was the one that was 11th, David Rigon setting 12th, Mauro Engel a bit disappointing, only 14th. Have a look down through that list, and when you get to the third page, you'll see that the number 5 Mercedes, even with Joel Camathias at the end of the session behind the wheel, still couldn't improve its lap time. A good effort in the end from the Mad Panda Mercedes to go 21st, Bentley 17th in the end, because the Pereira Altoe Costa Lamborghini got itself up to 16th. So again, a bit more shuffling in the times, a bit more shuffling in the order, but it does mean that we're going to have a fascinating pre-qualifying and then that 3-part qualifying session. Pre-qualifying just after 1:30 local time, in fact, so early afternoon for the pre-qualifying session. At the bottom of the times, the Santalok Audi number 26 of Michel Blanchemin, but the free practice period done, and for most of the teams, okay, they might have work on setup to worry about, but thankfully, apart from WRT really, nothing in the way of damage. They're the last group of cars, the Tempesta Racing Ferrari, HRT Mercedes and Santalok Audi round out the order. So activity on the Nordschleife for the RCN teams, lots of activity on the Grand Prix circuit. And let's have a look at the highlights then of the session that began in the sunshine. Number 5 Mercedes late out compared to number 4, which was quickest early on. We had number 159 running up the curb, coming down through the turn 6-7 sequence. Timothy Bure ran out of road coming through the S's, dropped it into the gravel, came out the other side, all was good. Edward Cheever was behind the wheel of the number 93 Ferrari early on, but despite a lot of effort being put in as he rattled over the curve at the chicane, wasn't really able to unlock the pace out of that car as the number 19 Mercedes Lamborghini ran out of road at the S's, the Hamaguchi Erhard Keen entry. The two Rover Porsches busy trying to get themselves up the order as well. And for CMR, the number 108 Bentley improving its lap times as the session wore on, with Stefan Tribodini being able to unlock the pace out of that car. Raffaele Marciello then set the fastest time. Others were chipping away, working on setup, cycling through drivers. For example, Aurelien Panis taking over in the Lexus. But then when Stuart Hall had this big moment down at turn 1, out came the red flag to interrupt the session. Everybody bailed for the pit lane. One or two teams did a little bit more work on setup, and then we got back underway with Marco Mappelli being the hero of the second element of the session, if you like, getting up to second fastest in the number 63 Lamborghini. Marciello ran out of road down at turn 1, got away with it, but didn't improve his time before the checkered flag as Dorian Boccalacci had this moment. Right, so pre-qualifying coming up at 1:30 local time. For now, from Gemma Scott, John Watson and David Addison, it's goodbye from the Nurburgring.